Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another crazy Sunday night discussion. I set this up as a podcast, and the name of the podcast is the show with yet to be determined. We got to come up with a snazzy name for it, but that's Witt's department, and he's lacking on this. So
it's the D2 show, so that's what it's called. But keep on going.
The yet to be named Sunday night show. Anyway, what a great weekend, gentlemen. All sorts of upsets, and I don't necessarily consider like somebody ranked in like 23 being upset, but there were some upsets at the top of the bracket or at the top of the poll. But first, I would like to start talking tonight about the Grand Valley CSU-Pueblo game. I want to talk about two different things. First, the Lakers looked pretty dominant, really handled the game, or controlled the game. Really impressed by them. The second thing I want to talk about, however, is what does this mean for Pueblo? But nonetheless, did any of you guys have a chance to watch it? If you did not, Grand Valley got out to a strong lead. They opened the game, went down, took the kickoff. No, I can't. Regardless, the first drive they went and scored. Then they got a kick return touchdown from Juan, I think is his first name, who was the Lone Star Conference Receiver of the Year back for Midwestern State back in 2019 or 18, whichever it was. And then kind of controlled the game and closed it with a decisive win. So wanted to bring Jake Rietma on to talk about that. He was at the game. Unfortunately, Jake actually has to work for a living, so he couldn't join us. He is really working because I think he's doing post game for Lions football, and I'm going to assume they lost today, but I'm not even going to look it up and just assume they lost. But so Jake's really earning it today. So that was what I thought was the best game. What we thought was the game of the week. We all, aside from Devin, picked Grand Valley to win, so it turned out like we thought it would, and pretty impressive win for the Lakers.
Brandon, in checking that, I saw some of the highlights of it, and I think you and I will kind of chat with each other sometimes on a given Saturday, and just kind of make ourselves aware of other things going on with games or scores and things like that. And when you and I both realized that Grand Valley had jumped on Pueblo right away, it was 14-0.
Right.
It seemed like before everybody was in their seats, and I immediately commented to you, "This game's over with."
Yes,
and I said that because in covering Pueblo for the last handful of years, when they lock horns with the Northern Sun in the playoffs, Pueblo, if they get down early, they're in trouble because they're not an offensively prolific or dynamic team, and they play a certain style where they're going to try and wear you down, get turnovers. I mean, they were one of the top teams in the country the last few years in getting turnovers and making points out of them. And when they're down 14-0, and you take a look at their offense this year, they struggled to score against Commerce a week ago, and at Grand Valley, I figured that they're in real trouble, and they were. Yeah. And so I think that's some of what we're looking at with Pueblo is they're going to need to find some offensive identity to really to be able to make this football team kind of take that next step. Since that whole 14 squad that they had that won the national title.
Yeah, well, a lot of times in the position that I'm in, you'll get a lot of hyperbole from every program every year. This is a great team. This is one of our best teams ever, et cetera, et cetera. We think we're going to be really good. I don't think Grand Valley is any exception to that. However, this year, when I'm talking to people in the know, in that area, people around the program, there's a little different body language, for lack of a better way to describe it, with them this year, in that I really believe that they have probably their best team probably since the late 2009, like the 2009 team made the national championship in spite of a lot of injuries. In 2013, they were in the semifinals. Nonetheless, I think this was probably the best team they've had since the late 2000s. And I think that, they're a serious threat. I don't know yet if they're a top 5 team. They might be, but this seems to be the best team that they've had in a long time. And
you mean Grand Valley, right?
Yes, I'm talking about Grand Valley. Yes, I'm sorry to switch. We were talking about Pueblo. Having said that about Pueblo, I totally agree with you. When we talked to Jimmy Pilato about CSU-Pueblo to start the year in our preview that we did, Jimmy talked about the fact that they needed to find some kind of offensive identity, to find some kind of offensive explosion. When I was watching that game, the play calling, the schemes, what they were doing, to me, it really felt like a team that was trying to come up with any way it could to generate some offense and to even get some points on the board. To me, it felt like desperation even pretty early. And I don't know if that's the fact, because I think typically – even with their, the 14 championship team, they like to, and they could throw the ball then, but they like to run the football and play defense. And so I think that, they're a team that has to figure it out. So let's look at that. CSU Pueblo, switching to them. Sorry to get us off track on that, Matt, but I want to share my screen with you. And you can see their schedule with what they have coming up. They're 0-2 in spite of, and part of that is because they played, what has been the most interesting and best schedule in the country so far.
Very ambitious, no doubt about it. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, what they have left, they have Black Hills State coming up next. That's a team that's 2-0 now, I believe, under new coach Josh Bresky. But that's still a game CSU Pueblo should win. South Dakota Mines also has a new coach, Charlie Floor. Still a game that you think they should win. They have an interesting game coming up here, and I'll highlight it on my screen. Colorado Mesa and CSU Pueblo will be the third new coach in a row. Tremaine Jackson is at Colorado Mesa. He has them looking pretty good at the beginning of the year. So it'll be 3 new looks for them. But I think the first 2 would probably be 2 games that they should win. The Mesa game at this point might be a toss-up.
Right.
Now, after that, Chadron State, New Mexico Highlands. Highlands has improved. They've got you were the one that informed me that they had a ton of transfers that came in. Right. And they played Mines very well yesterday. In fact, It was a game until late in the fourth quarter. It was a game that was close until the end. Chadron played Angelo well yesterday. I'm a little bit biased because by the time I got to really focusing on that was the time that Angelo was coming back and had their way with Chadron. So they didn't look that impressive to me, but they did get out to a big halftime lead. Then you got Adams, Fort Lewis, and then the game that could determine whether or not CSU Pueblo makes the playoffs would be that last game, second to last game of the year against Colorado Mines.
Right.
It could actually still theoretically be for the conference championship. That doesn't guarantee you anything when it comes to the playoffs, but what it says is that you're in a position to at least get earned access when you're the highest ranked team in the conference. Probably you're going to have to beat Mines to be the top ranked team in the regional rankings. In the conference, and then they end with Western Colorado. So talking about Pueblo, obviously an 0-2 start is not something that they wanted, but I think it's a team with things still to play for and a chance to figure it out maybe as the season goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right, so let's move on then, guys, and let's talk about the what would be the game of the week in the Northern Sun, and that would have been the Minnesota State Minnesota Duluth game, as you see from the results on your screen. Minnesota State fell to Minnesota Duluth 30-10. To me, it looked like a game that Duluth controlled, but Matt, you would be the expert on that, so share with us what you saw.
Yeah, Duluth hits Mankato right in the mouth right away. Hits a deep ball to Armani Carmichael, former Northwest Missouri State Bearcat, for a long score. And it kind of spoke to a little bit of what we were, kind of looking at with Mankato in the recent past, where they're kind of giving up some shots down the field for big scores. Then next possession, Duluth hits the tight end down the field wide open, and we're 14-0 right away. And similar feel there, where I'm thinking, boy, Mankato's got to kind of get off the canvas here because they just got knocked down. And that never really happened in this football game. Mankato's quarterback, J.D. Akoa, he was 8 of 20, another kind of bad outing, having a lot of trouble doing pitch and catch with his receivers. Frankly, they really missed Shane Zylstra as a wideout. They really missed the ability to have a big play and for him to come in, get him a long one, or even when they get in the red zone, they have a hard time getting touchdowns where he was such a threat before. Just go up and get a 50-50 ball. You got to credit how well Duluth defended. They kept Mankato under 100 yards rushing, had him under 100 yards passing at the end of the third quarter. Gives you a real good idea of how this football game went. They really limited the Mavs in front of a crowd of 6,500, the biggest crowd they've ever had at Molosky Stadium. So the fans were really hyped about it. And, you can't say enough about how well John Larson plays quarterback for Duluth. And he is he is a really good Division II football quarterback. I mean, he is rock solid. He can make plays with his feet. They tend to use him a little bit more that way when they have a high-profile game like this. He's scored twice, moves the chains when he needs to. Has some trouble staying healthy sometimes because of that style of football. But, a good passer. And Duluth, I think, really had a statement win there. They hadn't beaten Mankato in the last 5 chances dating back to 2011. So it was just a monster win for that program.
Very good. Well, they will have another good one this week. Duluth will probably be involved in one of the games that we'll take a look at the end of this. Another game that was surprising, I think, the biggest upset, it's hard to tell. We have a comment that I'm going to say for later, was about Southeastern beating Harding, being the biggest upset. But I think, in spite of the fact that they've had a good football program, Midwestern State beating Texas A&M-Commerce, to me, was the biggest upset of the weekend. Texas A&M-Commerce, they did have 3 losses in 2019, so they had 2 regular season losses. But having said that, there were some people that thought maybe they had the ability, or maybe they should be the number 1 team coming into the season. And Midwestern State was able to come back and win that one at the end. Actually, I'll play something. This is the last play of the game. This is from Corey Hogue, his Twitter account. He covers the Lone Star Conference. But in any case, that's the game-winning play essentially right there. And I don't know. Did you guys agree that was the biggest upset, at least the most surprising outcome of the weekend?
I honestly haven't gotten over the fact that we have video accompaniment with this chat right now, Brandon. I'm loving this. Look, hey guys, you see what he's doing here week to week? Jeez. But no, I'll exactly. Chris, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, Commerce got up big early, and this was a game that several games across the D2 landscape where the favorite got up early, and then they slowly, other teams start slipping in and chipping away at the lead. And I mean, it's very surprising. I mean, Midwestern State wasn't that great in 2019 after losing so much the season before, after the last season before that. So, to see them to kind of get this momentum now and on the upswing, it's very disappointing if you're a Lions fan. But great for Midwestern.
It's also interesting when we're talking about Duluth and Mankato, or as the rest of the country knows them as Minnesota State and UMD. But as we were talking about that game, We mentioned that Duluth was going to have be involved in another game of the week type game. Same goes for Texas A&M-Commerce, although a little luster is lost off of it because of the loss to Midwestern State. But anyway, let's go back and look some of the other results. As you see, the top two, Minnesota State lost to Texas A&M-Commerce. Texas A&M-Commerce was beaten by Midwestern State. Minnesota State lost to Minnesota Duluth. Then at 12, Harding was beaten by Southeastern Oklahoma. Their coach went for two at the end of the game and to take the lead, and it was a very gutsy call. The game was at Southeastern Oklahoma, and there, a lot of the times the traditional thought is play for the tie at home, and he went for the win, which I think was the right choice against Harding because they had previously just driven the ball down the field like a 5-minute drive, and they were going to, in my opinion, control the overtime if they went to overtime with their run game. CSU-Pueblo, Grand Valley. Then another game, one of the best games of the week, was IUP and Kutztown, and not much really happened in that game offensively, but it was just kind of a game where I felt like both teams just muddled through it, and I think they're justified in being ranked where they are. Good teams, not great teams, and I think IUP is really missing Quentin Maxwell at quarterback. They seem to have a tough time moving the ball. Did anybody else happen to catch that one? I know it's during a prime time, so I didn't think so. No worries at all. No worries at all. So, again, then the last game, what would be considered an upset was Nebraska-Kearney against Pitt State. And I watched like parts of all of these games. I was updating scores at the time, so my attention was divided. Did not get to give anything the sole attention that I would have liked. When it comes to Pitt State and Kearney, though, I thought Kearney was bigger. They were more physical, and their ability to throw off the run, but give option run looks and then throw off of that was really, really made them successful. And they hit some long passes. Pitt State's still trying to figure it out. They're under essentially what is a first-year coach for them, even though they played some games in the fall. I know people love to talk about how important those games were in the fall. I don't place as much importance on them as others. That's neither here nor there. Pitt State's trying to figure it out. And like I said, that was one of the games we picked as the pick 'em, and only Chuck Bender got it right. He was the only one. We all got it wrong. But, that was not a big upset from the standpoint of, Pitt State being a newly ranked team. They're low in the poll. That wasn't a big upset.
I was kicking myself for that because I was so ready to take Kearney a week ago. I think they just play a style with their running attack that's a little bit hard to prepare for, and the Pitt State thing. I wasn't quite sure, are they back and all that kind of stuff, and I think I probably fell for it, as well. And Chuck mentioned how they burned him in the past, and they burned me this weekend. So it is what it is.
Certainly. And I think, with some of us who would be veterans, and I would obviously be the most veteran among us, among D2 fans, there's the same sentimentality towards Pitt as there is like towards Nebraska in Division I. Not necessarily talking about the styles that they play, but like yearning for them to be great like they once were. You kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. One thing that I always talk about is nobody ever says, hey, you're giving us too much credit. Everybody says you're looking past us. We're underrated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so respect, in my opinion, is always too slow to come, and it's too slow to go away. And I think that influences some of the more veteran, or as other people call it, the old men of the group. That we want to, we want those teams to be great. And that's not a slight. It's just a nature of fandom and following sports. So
absolutely.
All right, man. So let's move on. That is all I wanted to talk about in terms of the games last week. It was a crazy week, but it was a fun week. As far as the games in the top 25, Chris, I want to talk. Did you happen to have a chance to look and see that Bluefield State was able to tell us about that? Yeah.
Oh my gosh! So this featured Bluefield State, which is they just restarted their football program after about 40 years, and they travel to Elizabeth City State, which is probably one of the lower performing CIAA teams. Has been for a couple of years. Really had some issues, funding wise, coaching staff wise, a lot of turnover, and it's a first year program, so generally CIAA teams sometimes schedule schools like this, and it's a fairly easy win. And Elizabeth City certainly certainly jumped out to this huge lead, 21-0 in the first quarter. And then Bluefield slowly started getting back into the game. They ended up getting 21-all by the end of the first half. But what happened after that was Bluefield slowly started taking control by capitalizing off of Elizabeth City's miscues. This is a school that they committed 130 yards in penalties. They had 4 turnovers. And what you end up happening in the end, they actually drove the length of the field twice, and they stalled out inside the 5. It was like this perfect storm of what happened for Bluefield to get this win. And Bluefield won by 8, and it was their first win in 41 years. It's an incredible story. But I know I was talking with Chuck about it, and Chuck was just like, how can a school that just started football even be competitive at this point?
Right.
And that's exactly what you got. So for that, I'm giving Elizabeth City the big L in Viking blue because they deserve every bit of it. Come on.
I think it speaks to a bigger picture. And it's really talking about the barriers to entry. And the biggest lesson we learned about that was with West Florida, that they played in the national championship essentially 4 years after 5 years after they started their program, in 4th year competition. Then they won it a few years later, right? That could not happen at the FBS level. I think theoretically, maybe at the FCS level for an extremely, extremely well-funded program, it could happen. But really, it's just about the barriers to entry being lower. And that's not an insult. It's not a compliment. It simply is what it is. While D2 football budgets are $3 million-ish at most, D1 football budgets are what, 130 million or something? It's the different, or FBS anyway. And it just speaks to the nature of the game that we love, that you're able to come in and be successful. And having said that, it's a great reason for programs, for schools to start football programs. Nonetheless, that's a side note. Matt knows I love to get into those. So,
well, let me, while we're speaking with Chris here, Chris, I couldn't help but notice on your Twitter feed that you seem to really be beaming about the performance of the CIAA this week. Would you like to talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, the CIAA got two wins out of 11 teams, which was pretty rough by most standards. But there are 2 teams that those 2 wins are pretty critical wins for the conference. And it's easy to understand that the CIAA has about 5 or 6 teams that are pretty decent and can actually have a competitive game out of conference. And the rest are just fighting to stay out of the basement and not be the last team. But Bowie State, which is the ranked team for the CIAA, they actually had a GLIAC school come to Bowie State, and Bowie actually won that game in dramatic fashion. And so huge win in terms of taking that next step forward for the conference. And then Chowan, which is a newer Division II program, is 2-0 for the first time in their Division II era. 2-0 first time since 1999, and they won both of their games against South Atlantic teams and in overtime. And so those are excellent games. The problem is then you have, the Bluefield States coming in to get a win. Allen is another team that from the SIAC that is new to Division II this year. But actually, Allen as an NAIA team beat Elizabeth City in the last game of the 2019 season, and now they go to John C. Smith, which is another bottom team for the CIAA, and beat them on their home field. And I do want to note that if you thought about Presbyterian, who doesn't kick, they don't do punting, right? Allen has not attempted a PAT this year. They've scored several, like 5 touchdowns in 2 games, and they have not even attempted to kick anything. So they actually got a win based on a 2-point conversion. I mean, it's just incredible to see. It's interesting to watch those games. I mean, they can be rough at times, but it's competitive. They're competitive games. And then you got like the rest of the conference, which is kind of like here. It's a bit of a struggle fest in there, but there are a lot of teams that are still trying to figure out their identities, and they didn't play, in 2020, so that doesn't help their case. So,
Justin? Didn't you guys have a game with a CIAA team from the Gulf South this last week?
Well, the game that was coming to mind was the Tusculum Chowan game. That game stuck out to me. Just double overtime, big win. I thought that was impressive. And then Valdosta obviously going to Virginia Union 51-7. I did not have a chance to watch that game. I don't.
Did you make that paper at the end of the first quarter right there?
Exactly.
I listened to the game, and after the first quarter, I just turned. It was a nice filler game because the CIAA has so many games that start over the course of an afternoon. 1:00 games. That was Bowie State. That was Chowan, and then Valdosta, Virginia Union started at like 5:00 or something like that.
Yeah, it was
and then we had a bunch of games start at 6. So I was like, okay, I could probably get my fix of Virginia Union and Valdosta in 1 hour. And that's exactly what it took, because at the end of that 1 hour, I was out. I was like, this is pointless. I'm not doing this. I'm not subjecting myself to this.
Chris, doesn't Chowan have a pretty good quarterback? What's his last name anyway?
His last name was Witt.
Okay, I just checked.
I thought they were all linemen if they were Witt.
Easy.
Hey, that's not an insult. That's not an insult. People need hogs,
That'll be enough. Justin, but continuing off with what happened in your conference, what kind of sums up some of the action that you had there?
Well, the West Alabama over Tuskegee, I don't want to say I saw that coming, but that was a good win, I thought, for West Alabama. North Greenville surprised me going down to Newberry on Hall of Fame weekend and winning down there pretty handily, 24-14. Was impressive to me, especially because I think North Greenville has a lot to prove this year with what, just having, I thought they had a pretty down year in 2019. So I think they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and they've impressed me so far early this year, granted non-conference, but against 2 South Atlantic teams that are not bad. The West Georgia game against Morehouse, I peeked in on that a little bit. It was over early. I did not get a chance to see the Albany State shorter game. And the other one I watched quite a bit was McKendree Delta State. McKendree got up on Delta State early and had a little bit of an upset brewing there first quarter. And then Delta State slowly started coming to life. And by about halftime, it was pretty handily Delta State. And then the second half, they were able to pull away. And, McKendree had a couple injuries with their quarterback. I think they had a running back go down and a receiver. So they battled some injuries, but I was able to watch a good part of that game, and for Delta State, I was glad to see them from a conference perspective pull away late. At first I thought it was going to be a pretty close game back and forth. It didn't look like they were clicking at all, but they started clicking and it was over. And then the last game, West Florida, Southwest Baptist, that was over early. And it was a great atmosphere. I don't know if anybody got a chance to watch that game.
That was the one on the practice field, right?
Yes, it was.
But it looked pretty good.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, they did a great job. I think it was a great experience for those athletes and for the community there. I don't know if anybody had a chance to see it, but they brought in bleachers on both sides. They brought in a jumbotron. They had people sitting out on the hill on both sides of the bleachers that they brought in, and there were food trucks, and it seemed like it was a really, really great environment. Maybe it wasn't a super tight game, but I thought it was a pretty good environment for the first time ever having a game on campus.
That would be pretty interesting, yeah. Yeah, it didn't look like they had a bad practice field either.
No, they don't. And
it looked pretty good.
I think some other schools would be just fine as that being their real field, but yes.
Well, exactly. And, it's funny because when you look at their field, it's kind of sandwiched in there. Yeah, that looks phenomenal. But when it's sandwiched in there between a couple of buildings and the light poles are kind of like right there on it. And I thought maybe, you might see them, build that into a stadium, but they're kind of landlocked. So it'd be interesting to see what they do if they build that into a stadium with.
I believe that is the plan.
Permanent structure. I just didn't know because of the way it's landlocked. I didn't know if they were going to build it there or build it somewhere else on campus. But
I could be wrong, but I believe that's the plan to do it at that location. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a beautiful location, and the field is phenomenal. And they have a scoreboard. It was a built-in scoreboard on the one end, and there is a jumbotron. So it's pretty awesome, actually. I think it's pretty cool. They play in a baseball stadium. That's not bad to optics there, overlooking the water. So you can't complain about that. But that was a great environment. And I think what they've shown, though, is that, you may still play at the baseball field, but it's feasible to do 1, 2, 3 games a year, depending on that facility. And it's really no different than, like y'all said, it's really no different than many other schools and their home facilities.
Right.
So,
I think what the one thing they had going for them in this instance was it's beginning of the year. It's nice. People sit on the grass. Number 2, they had Southwest Baptist as the opponent, a team that doesn't draw well at home, much less they're not going to have a fan base that drives to Pensacola and shows up with 1,000 people there and so that's what kind of helped that happen. If they're playing Texas A&M-Commerce, they couldn't do that potentially at that home field, or certainly couldn't play Valdosta at that home field. That would be a little more difficult. And I was thinking while we were talking, West Florida is dominating every game that they're playing right now. Valdosta State is dominating every game that they're playing right now. It looks to me like that might be the best conference in the country this year, is the Gulf South. Does anybody disagree with that? All right.
At this point, no.
I love it. I love it. That's the right answer, man. So,
and it's funny because I think those are obviously the 2 marquee teams, but I'm telling, I'm not dismissing West Georgia not to have
exactly. Yeah.
Or even West Alabama. I mean, so I think there could be 4 teams at the end of this thing that are pretty darn tough. But
in Super Region 2 as well. I mean, you look at once you get past the South Atlantic has 2 teams probably at Wingate and Lenore-Ryan. The CIAA could quite possibly only have 1 team. And the SIAC is always a huge question mark whether they can even get enough to mount an effort to get somebody into the playoffs. I mean, you could very well see 3 or 4 Gulf South teams in the Super Region 2 playoffs this year.
Certainly Bowie's loss to open the year hurts the CIAA because you're thinking that they're going to be the best team in the conference.
It was a D1 school, so it doesn't count.
That's true.
Yeah, but a team that only had 2 wins the last year they played. You expect a ranked team to do better than that against a 2-win.
Well, no. I think Chris is right in terms of the mindset. No, I think Chris is right in terms of the mindset that I had. But at the same time, I think you're right in terms of Bowie not being as good as we thought they might be this year. I think both of those things can be accurate. or can be true. Let's anything else we need to focus on from last week, man, or can we go ahead and move on to this week?
Well, can we give Devin 2 seconds worth of? I realize that he just got done playing Call of Duty. He's got his headset on. Did you get in a game after you had to come down after the Chiefs game there?
No, this is what I usually use when I broadcast my high school games on Friday night.
I know.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
I hadn't even had a chance to make fun of you yet, so that's the first time.
I have a PlayStation, not Xbox, so a little bit different. Anyways, anyways, with Kearney and Pitt State, I was actually near Brandon's neck of the woods where he grew up on Saturday watching a high school football game. But I was able to watch the game a little bit there through Twitter and just kind of picking up things while I was watching it. And it looks like Pitt State just kind of fell apart in the second half on offense. Wasn't able to get much going, and Kearney was able to just kind of have their way with it on offense. I was kind of looking at the drive charts and everything. And Pitt State in the second half, let's see if I get their drive chart here real quick, went interception, punt, interception, downs, interception. I mean, they just couldn't get anything going in the second half. And then Nebraska Kearney had a 95-yard drive to take the lead there in that fourth quarter, kind of swung the momentum a little bit. They were able to hold the ball for quite a bit of time and just kind of dictate the game on their terms. As Whit was saying when I was listening earlier, there's a physical football team. They play a unique style that's really tough to play week in, week out, because there's a lot of different styles of offense in the MIAA. So they bring us a unique style that's hard to game plan in just a week for. So I think Kearney's going to be a really tough team to beat. And I think Pitt State's going to be fine. The MIAA is just kind of weird this year. I mean, Fort Hays lost to Missouri Western after Missouri Western lost to UCO. UCO lost to Emporia. I'm not sure what to do with the middle of the conference right now. I'm not sure how good Northwest is at this point. You saw them in a low-scoring game versus Fort Hays, and then Fort Hays came back this week and put up 31 points against Missouri Western. So I'm very confused with the conference right now. It's a lot of fluctuation right now. And it's hard to get a beat on, which makes my job so much easier, I guess, going week in, week out, trying to predict games. But it makes the conference a lot of fun this year.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think that's generally an indicator that a conference doesn't have a true national champion contender, or the conference is not that good. There was only historically, for a team to be a legitimate national championship contender, they need to beat teams in their conference like 42-10 on a regular basis. It's just happens over and over. The NCC, when it existed, was the one conference where you could beat teams like 21-17, 21-14, and they would still have legitimate national championship contenders. Mm-hmm. But if every conference game is close, it generally means you don't have a team, or the Gulf South might be the other exception too, but it generally means there's not a team in it that is a championship contender. And I think that's maybe what you're seeing in the MIAA. I still believe Northwest Missouri is a top 5-ish team, but I don't know.
The offense scares me.
Well,
the offense production scares me.
I don't know if there might be a gap between 1, 2, 3, and 4 and everybody else is what I'm thinking too. And I'm thinking that the 1, 2, 3, and 4 might be Ferris, West Florida, Valdosta, and I can't think of the other one off the top of my head. It might be Grand Valley. It could be Illinois, and I'm not sure on that. But I believe that there might be a group that's clearly separate from the rest of them. Sure. But nonetheless, let's focus on this week. Whenever we are putting together our preseason, the preseason preview that we did, I was looking at best games of the year to talk about, and every week we had them. And eventually we'll get to our pick 'em this week. But Devin, I want to continue with you because at the beginning of the year, I had Central Missouri hosting Northwest Missouri in week 3 as one of the best games of the week. Does not look anything like that right now.
Nope.
So
absolutely not. I mean, UCM, I thought Northwest offense struggled, but they struggled immensely against Washburn. I think it was Thursday in Topeka. Only measured 10 points up. Not a whole lot of yards. They weren't moving the ball either. It's really weird to see Coach Sabota team that can't score or move the ball on offense. I'm not sure what's going on right now, and it's not going to get much easier playing Northwest this week. So not looking good for the Mules here earlier in the season after being really good in 2019.
Right, some other games that I thought were good this week or interesting, and we'll do our pick 'em and what should be the best 5 games of the week last, guys. Bowie State at New Haven. I thought that was interesting from 2 teams from 2 different regions, 2 teams that think that they should be successful. and it'll be interesting to draw a comparison with those.
And they have history.
Yeah. Oh, really? Tell us about that, Chris, real quick.
Yeah, they have history. I think, if I remember correctly, the last time the two teams played, a couple of years ago, Bowie State went to New Haven and pulled off the victory with some special teams mishaps. It was a really interesting game, and Bowie State traditionally plays well against the Northeast 10, not just New Haven, but other schools as well that they play. They generally do well. So it's going to be a really interesting game to watch for sure.
All right. So that one, Lenore Ryan at Newberry. Unfortunately, Chuck's not with us, or he could talk about that one. In the Gulf South, Justin, Delta State and West Georgia.
Yeah, that should be a pretty good game, I think, so far, what we've seen. Haven't really dove into it to really kind of get a feel for who I like in this one yet, but sure. I do think this can be the first of several big matchups in the Gulf South this year. Again, I think the way that West Georgia played this past week was impressive. You know, Delta can't get out to a slow start like they did against McKendree, or it'll be over early, I think. But I'm looking forward to this game, actually. This is the one game that in the first 3 weeks has really caught my attention, just because I think the way that they've played, both teams have played well here early, and I think it's the first of several big matchups in the conference.
All right. Also, I've got I had Saginaw Valley and Ferris as an interesting game. I think that's less interesting after Bowie beat Saginaw. Albany State and Valdosta State. Albany State's really been the one SIAC team that's really had some success against the Gulf South from time to time. You know, it seems like a program that's very up and down, but that should be a pretty interesting game. Chuck had given me Charleston and Frostburg State. Both those teams are in the MEC. Both were picked like 2 and 3, I believe, to start the year. And then Stonehill at Bentley is a Northeast 10 game that should be pretty good. Should be a pretty good one and be important in terms of the Northeast 10. Before we get to the games of the week this week, I wanted to remind everybody, go ahead and if you would hit the subscribe and the like and share, and if you watch YouTube and you see all the other stuff that they always say that crap, we'd appreciate it. It does help. You know what I'm saying, Devin. So every one of them's got a
like and subscribe.
That's right, exactly.
Do we have a Patreon account and everything too?
Yeah. Hey, well, you'll get this 2 minutes earlier than everybody else. But anyway, if you
go
would
behind the scenes,
that's right. Yeah,
they get to click in at like 7:50 or 6:55 or something.
we might be in trouble if they did that. But nonetheless, if you could do that, we would greatly appreciate it. And as well, you know, if you go to D2FOOTBALL.com/support, if you have the ability, the desire, you know, any financial help that you can give the site to help it survive and thrive is greatly appreciated. I always make the joke, it's free, but it's not cheap. And, you know, there's lots of guys here giving their time. And, you know, we would really appreciate any support you can give us. So got those two things out of the way. Let's go ahead and look at what I think are the top 5 games this week. You guys don't know what they are, even though you have a good guess. And we're going to do our pick 'em now without any preparation, which is how we do everything on the website. So let's go ahead first. Let's talk about Tiffin and Indianapolis. It'll be, in my opinion, a good GLVC GMAC contest, evenly matched. Let's go in order. Well, before we pick them, does anybody have any comments? I doubt that they do, because both teams have been very familiar. All right, let's go ahead and Matt, you go first. Tiffin or Indianapolis?
Yeah, I got Tiffin in this one. I haven't been real impressed with Indianapolis so far this year. They find themselves in a dogfight with St. Xavier a week ago, who was kind of a rebuilding, formerly NAIA power.
Right.
And they were, I think, in a 10-10 game at half or something like that. So I kind of like what Tiffin has offensively. I think they got some weapons. I like them winning that football game.
All right. And Devin, Tiffin or Indianapolis?
Well, UND's best offensive player plays for Northwest now, so I'm going to take Tiffin in this one to win this one.
Very good.
This reminds me of when I picked Duluth a week ago and was right, by the way. Let's shine the light on that a little bit. But I'm not one to toot my own horn, but toot. And then everyone else picked Duluth after that, which wasn't cool. But so everyone's going to pick Tiffin now, right?
No.
Is that what's going to happen here?
No, Chuck
I'm
and
picking last from now on.
Chuck and I both picked Mankato, just so you wouldn't have to feel bad about your pick going first. So, all right.
I think the Luthians only got it right last week, so I appreciate the help there. I needed that help.
No, you're good. You're good on IUP and Ferris, but
okay.
Okay.
You misled us on Pitt State. I just thought.
Yes, I did. I drank the Nebraska-like Kool-Aid there.
There you go. Says, so. That's exactly right. So, Chris.
Tiffin.
All right. Tiffin. So that leaves me, and I'm going to go with you, Indy, just to be different. Just so Matt, because I'm worried about Matt.
Did Justin pick, or did my video skip?
Oh no, Justin, go ahead.
No, I didn't. And actually, I'm glad you took Indianapolis because I'm going to take them too at home.
Okay. You know what? We both went last week. No, we didn't. Yeah, we both screwed up on Pitt. Okay, I knew there was something that we were both the same on that we didn't get right. So
yeah,
all right. So that is what I have as the first one. I think that's actually, it's pretty interesting. They're not two teams. They're certainly playoff contenders. I don't think they're national championship contenders, but I think evenly matched. I think that's a good pick 'em between two good teams in two different conferences. Let's look now at Midwestern State and Angelo State. Both teams are undefeated. Midwestern struggled with Quincy a little bit, but then they had the upset over Texas A&M-Commerce. And
is this at Angelo or is this a neutral site game?
It is at Angelo, I believe. Okay. Yes. Yeah, it's at Angelo. So we'll do it in reverse order this time. Devin, you go first.
That's not reverse order, but I'll go first. Let's see here.
On my screen, it's reversed order, and that's what matters. It's probably different for everybody. So go ahead.
I'm going to go with Angelo State. I don't think Midwestern's going to come down after winning last week and have a little bit of a letdown this week. So give me Angelo State to win this one. Yeah.
Okay. And Justin?
Angelo State at home.
Okay. All right. Chris?
I'm going with Angelo as well. I like the running attack. I think that Midwest is just going to have to prove it here.
Okay. And I'll pick Midwestern. Okay. And Matt, you get to go last.
Yeah, I don't think Angelo State, kind of has the popcorn fart that they did in the first half against Shadron. And I think that they end up playing a whole lot better this time around, and I like him in this football game.
Okay. All right. And let's move on now.
Woodhead's not at Chatter anymore, right? He's not winning another Harlem Hill.
I saw a video of him today. Amazing. All right, let's go Shepherd and IUP. And let's start with Justin this time. Or you know what, Justin, I'll go first because I skipped me in the I'll go first, and I will pick Shepherd. Okay. Okay. Now, Justin, you go.
I went against IUP last week, and I was wrong, so I'm going to take IUP this week.
Okay. Okay. And Chris.
So Tyson Bagent is my QB1 in fantasy football, so I have to take Shepherd. Go Rams.
Okay.
See the D2 fantasy plug there by Chris? He couldn't help himself.
All right, Matt, go ahead.
I like Shepherd. I like their offense. I like them in this football game.
Agreed. And Devin, you'd be the last to go. Okay.
I'm going with the home team, the Crimson Hawks, in this one to take the win over Shepherd. Be a good game, though.
Okay, awesome. So, all right, let me get that out of the way. All right. Minnesota Duluth is going to play at Winona State. When I first started the site, Winona State was the best program in the NSIC. Duluth and Minnesota State were still in the NCC at the time. In fact, they moved back forward. But nonetheless, Minnesota Duluth at Winona State. I will go first. And judging by what how Winona State struggled at the beginning of the game this week, that's only and how strong Duluth was. I'm going to go with Minnesota Duluth. Okay, Justin.
Minnesota Duluth as well, and I'm not saying that because you chose it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, because you know better than to copy off me by now. All right, Chris.
I got more fantasy football riding on Duluth, so I'm going with the Bulldogs. Let's go.
Okay.
Who do you have on Duluth? Carmichael?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think Whit needs to go last on this one, by the way.
Okay, fair enough. That's probably a good point. Devin, then.
Go Dogs. Thinking Duluth.
Okay. Matt, what wiki?
I think this is a lot harder game to pick than most might think. Winona destroyed Concordia in the first week of the season in a game that was most thought would be fairly close. This is the last year for their head coach, Tom Sawyer. Winona's not an easy place to play. I do favor Duluth to win, but boy, that's a risk for a letdown after such a big game against Mankato. I think they're at a real risk for that. I think it'll be a very close game. I think Duluth does pull it out.
Okay. All right. And the last game, one that, as we talked about, and I think it's the game of the week, even though it lost a little of its luster, West Florida will play Texas A&M-Commerce. It should have and could have been the battle of undefeateds. Let's start with Chris Ferguson. Okay, Ferg, who you got?
I'm a commerce student, so this don't hurt. This hurts, but unfortunately, I just don't see them having the horsepower right now to keep up with West Florida.
All right, awesome. So, okay, Matt.
I think how many points are being scored in this game will be a real good indicator of, like who's winning. For example, if this game is, under 20 points each, then it's a Commerce kind of football game, I think. I think if West Florida if this game gets some more high scoring, I don't think that's the game that Commerce wants to be involved with at all. Right. So, and I think there's a real risk that West Florida might be able to capitalize on the fact that Commerce doesn't have, their star quarterback from a season ago, and they just haven't exactly been who we expected them to be when this guy thought that they were a top 5 team coming into the season.
Okay. All right. And Devin, who you were going to go with?
I think Commerce has been tested a little bit more this year, but as Matt kind of said there, I like points, so I'm going to take West Florida because I think they're going to put a lot of points up on the board, and if they're starting in a shootout, I don't think Commerce has the weapons they kind of said they're to keep up with West Florida. So I'm going to go with the offense with the Argonauts.
All right. I will go with West Florida as well. And Gulf South columnist Justin Polizzi, who are you going to pick in this game?
Take the Lions. Do
it. He's not going to do it because I already abandoned ship too.
I hear you, Chris. I hear you. No, I think it's West Florida.
Very good.
Their offense looks unstoppable at this point right now.
Very good. All right, there we go. I'll get Chuck's from him so that we can ridicule him later, and I guess everybody will just have to trust that Chuck is honest with us. So
make sure he sees Witt's picks first. That way you can copy him down.
There you go.
Yeah.
The next time we do this without Chuck, you just need to have Chuck's cat.
That's
the other camp.
By far the most popular piece of content that we've done all year with this cat in the background. So,
right there with Chris's map. Exactly.
Right. I love Chris's map though, but that's another story. All right. Hey guys, I said to interact with us, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Jonathan Perry had a question. Where do you see Notre Dame? Are they a top 5 team, or are they where they should be at 9? Anybody want to take this? If not, I will.
No, they're not a top 5 team.
I agree.
They it was interesting when McLaughlin left. Who was going to replace that running back? That turned into Tobias Taylor, who I covered very well at Virginia Union, and then he left. And so they don't have kind of like they've kind of reborn a little bit, but I think it brings them down a notch to not have that killer at running back that they're used to having. Are they a great team? Absolutely. But when we've talked about those 5 teams that we see as a national championship contender, I don't see Notre Dame at that level.
I agree, and they're struggling a little bit more than I think they should if they're a top 5 team, and like Chris said, they're having to do things differently because Chris Brim is having to take more of the load of the offense at quarterback when he's as Chris said, they've been a running team. They had a tight end named Zaire was his first name. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. I deal with 12,000 names a year. But I thought he was very impactful, and he did not return. He transferred out, and he's playing Division I somewhere. And I think that's been big for them as well. And so to answer your question, Jonathan, I think that most of us believe that Notre Dame is probably somewhere in the 10 to 15 range. Is that where you guys would have them maybe?
Yeah, when you take a look at, and I'm going to offer some transparency in my own voting. When I take a look at this group of company in the top 5 of your West Floridas, your Florida State, or your Ferris States, then you go right from there, and you got Valdosta, you got Northwest Missouri State, then Lenore-Rhine. That's pretty tough company. Right. When I look at that group right there, then you've got, the Colorado Mines, and there's kind of a next group, I think, after that top 4 or 5. But boy, getting in that top group, that's pretty elite company right now, I think.
All right, man. Well, that is all that I had to cover. Are we missing anything?
The MIAA only has about one good game this week. It's Washburn and Kearney. I just think it's interesting because Washburn started out pretty hot this year, beating UCM last week. I know they easy win the first week, and then Kearney picked up 2 big wins early in the year. So I think this is kind of a battle for maybe who could possibly be that second best team to push Northwest for the best in the conference kind of deal. So I think it's another big matchup again for Kearney as the MIAA starts to sort itself out just a little bit going forward. Just in the MIAA, a lot of the other games aren't great, but that's a good one at least.
I want to answer Joshua's question. Matt, did you want to take that, or I saw you looking, or do you want me to take
the Ouachita one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and taking a look, I'm looking at my sheet. I've actually got them at 10 right now on my own voting. I think that they're right on the cusp there, of getting in that top 10. I mean, as mentioned, when you have losses with, the Harding, Pueblo, Kutztown, Pitt State, I mean, you did have a fair amount of teams there, and Mankato, obviously, losing in pretty convincing fashion that may very well drop them out of the top 10 also. I think Ouachita at 10 is about right, in my opinion. Yeah.
The thing to understand, and we've talked about this, and I know privately I've talked with you guys many times, these are not standings. CSU-Pueblo, let's say they had played the game that they did against Commerce, and then they played Grand Valley tough, lost 28-21, 28-24, something like that. Mm-hmm. CSU-Pueblo could be 0-2 and still one of the top 10 teams in the country.
Right.
So it's in my opinion incorrect to get wrapped up, especially early on the record, and not to look at it as standings. Because there's going to be, and you guys know this, there are some teams that are going to be 10-0 by the end of the year, and they're still going to get beat in the first round of the playoffs because of their schedule. Yep. It's just the nature of the game. It happens every year. Even good teams. Heck, Bowie's a good team. That happened to them last year. I think that was anomalous, but nonetheless, that these are going to happen. So I think especially early on, we don't need to get wrapped up in the wins or losses. These polls are opinions.
Mm-hmm. And you don't want to disincentivize good out-of-conference games either by punishing teams punitively for losing a good out-of-conference game. You want to for Pueblo for playing Grand Valley State. You don't want to punish them greatly if that game would have been close, kind of deal. You want to reward them a little bit for scheduling something out of conference. That's why I wish the MIAA did add a conference game so you could have some good games like we had in the past. But now it's all in conference. It kind of stinks a little bit that, and I don't want to desensitize anybody else outside of conference for playing good games versus other good teams.
And that goes into the Ouachita issue, because that's another team that plays nothing but in conference games.
Right.
So how do you gauge them? Are they truly a top 10 team, or are we just really going off of style points and also, the record? I mean, it's kind of hard to gauge whether they are there or not with the way that the GAC schedules.
Well, hold on. I'm going to bring something up real quick, man. So if you look, I think, we talked about teams that lost in the first I had a great record and lost in the first round. I believe that was Ouachita, wasn't it? Yeah, they got beat by Lindenwood.
They did.
It wasn't good. It was not good.
Right. As you see, so I think it's an example of why not to get wrapped up into the records at this point of the year, and that, there are going to be teams with good records that do lose or that do lose in the first round of the playoffs. Are going to be teams with bad records that are still highly ranked at the beginning of the year.
Well, and past success is always going to play into where you have a team until you've got enough real data. I mean, frankly, we have Ferris State pretty high, and they've got the same record as Ouachita. Well, there's a reason for that. Ferris State has shown more, once they've gotten outside their conference than Ouachita has. And that's just one example of the thinking that you have when you arrive at these rankings without having a ton of data.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, I think I am going to wrap it up there, man. It was a great week. I look forward to another good one. I appreciate you all for being here. I appreciate you guys, anybody watching. And remember, hit like and subscribe and all that stuff. You can come back and watch us, share it on your social media. And as well, if you can, go to d2football.com/support and support us. And as we leave, we will list all of the guys all the folks who have supported us, and we greatly appreciate that. And we will see you next week at the same time. Thanks for watching.
Good Chiefs. Chris, you're